And next, ladies and gentlemen, we also have another motivation talk on the topic of the digital transformation dilemma. We are very honored to have our special guest speaker. So could you please join me in welcoming board member of Saudi Telecom Company and former CEO India and South Asia operations of Bharti Airtel. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause to welcome Mr. Sanjay Kapoor. Please.
A very good morning to all of you, and a big thank you to the Ministry of Commerce for having invited me to the CLMVT Forum 2018. I've spoken about many subjects across the globe, but this one is a little more difficult because I've never had my wife be sitting in the audience, and this is the first time she's there. So I hope I'm not being judged once again. With that, no matter which board I sit on, no matter which part of the world I visit, there is a discussion around the digital transformation, which is a reality today. Every company, every country wants to use digital transformation to their advantage and also to remain relevant to whatever they do. It's more important for countries like the ones in CLMVT because we were lagged when it came to physical infrastructure with the developed part of the world, but we don't want to be lagged when it comes to the digital infrastructure and capabilities. We want to compete with the world and actually make up the deficit that probably got created. With that in mind, there are various success factors and everybody wonders what it takes to digitalize and win in the digital economies. And I have my own thought process around this, and this morning we'll share a few insights into what I think really takes to win. Of course, there are tens of factors that each one of us can discuss, but given the time constraint and the relevance of the subject this morning, I'm going to actually delve on a few things that I have experienced over the last few years. Technology is transforming the world, and all of us are aware of it. When you look at mobile phones, they're all pervasive today. When you look at the e-commerce, it is truly reality. That is meaning that the entire online fraternity is now fully engaged. And what's more important is the online fraternity is not only engaged, but is also becoming very smart because they compare, they evaluate, they look into the insights, and then take their calls. When it comes down to what and how we have got impacted, I think everything has got expedited. Whether it's the search, it is 25x faster. Whether it's anything to do with the entertainment journey or discovery there, it's become much faster. When it comes to organizing an event today, we don't have to wait for a whole day or a couple of days to make it happen. We can make it happen in a few minutes, maybe 30 or less. And finally, when it comes to e-commerce and purchase deliveries, we've really moved to 100x faster than what we were used to in the past. This is just a backdrop which also leads to the displacement that has happened in the pecking order of value creation across the globe. Look at the sort of companies that were really at the helm and of the race towards value creation in 2002. And every 5 years, that stack has undergone a change. And when you really come down to 2018, you see that all the value creators in the world, the top 5 value creators, are actually from the digital world. And that's a major transformation that has hit the world. I don't know what it will look like in the next 5 years because the change is faster than what we have been used to. Given this, obviously, the digital possibilities are immense, and everybody is wondering what it takes to win. My theory on what it takes to win and limiting it to 3 important factors that I'll discuss with you this morning is linear versus non-linear thinking, and I'll dwell on that a little bit as we progress. Collaboration versus competition, and I'll talk about that as well. and finally a global versus local approach. But let's go one by one and come down to a non-linear thinking versus a linear agenda that we have been used to. And let me describe this. We all come from a world of voice and messaging, and that was a linear world. Do you remember when we made a call between two parties? It was very easy to figure out what exactly went through the call and what exactly went wrong when a call went bad. Same was the case with SMS or messaging that we all grew up with. But today when you look at the digital world and data world, it has moved to complete non-linearity. And when I talk about non-linearity, I mean, can you imagine when a data session gets established, there is a last mile, there is a device, there's an application, there's a content, there is storage, there is security, etc., and access, which is very important. So all these interplay to give us a data session. And when something goes wrong in this non-linearity, it's very difficult to even figure out what went wrong. Was it the under-the-sea cable coming from cross-Atlantic, or was it the last mile, or was the content lying somewhere else, or the application itself, or the interface on the digital device? Nobody knows. And this has drawn a change in the way we think. Can you imagine how a news got published in a non-linear or in a linear environment earlier? A reporter went to an event like this, took out his camera, took out his pen, made notings, took some pictures, came back, wrote a report, and next morning it got published in the newspaper. Today what happens in the non-linear world? The news gets published even before a reporter has reached there. Somebody locally has captured it on his phone or any device and uploads it. The reporter goes there, probably notes down a few points, takes some reactions. A photographer goes in his own time. He doesn't have to time it with the reporter. And then the content gets dissipated based on what device you use in different manners all across. And in the morning, when we read the news in the newspaper, we already know it because there are several medias, including social networking, who have already informed us about what's happening. And this has led to the success of digital in the non-linear environment. Look at Tesla, for example. And Elon Musk in 2014 had about 200 patents around electric vehicles. And he had an option to keep all those with himself, right? And make a lot of money selling those patents itself. But he said, no, that's not the way to create world's best electric car and probably world's first electric car. And therefore, he opened up those 200 patents to everybody, and the result is known to us. Today, Tesla has changed the way the entire automotive industry thinks about vehicles, and it has really disrupted the entire environment, and therefore the non-linear thinking has come to play. Same happened with Amazon many years back. It was challenged by Barnes and Nobles, and it had to disrupt its own model, come out with things like Kindle, right? And it didn't happen on cutting prices to be competitive. It totally brought in non-linearity into the way it projected and thought, and that's the transformation that really happened. And this is happening because the world of voice was distinctly different from the world of data. Voice, 80% of the voice got consumed outdoors, and 80% of the data gets consumed indoors. And that's a sea change of the way we behave, the way we conduct. And those organizations, those countries who pick up the non-linearity and pick up the non-linear way of thinking in designing their architecture around digital transformation are, according to me, more prone to succeed. Let's get down to the collaboration and the collaborative part. All of us very fiercely compete in the industries that we are a part of. And in the current world of digitization and digital transformation, there is one cardinal rule that has come up, and that cardinal rule is the winner can't take it all, right? That means everything, there'll be many winners. There will not be one winner, there'll be multiple winners. And you need to find out what is the role that you are going to play, right? Even Google can't win it alone. You know, they have to rely for access on somebody else. They have to rely on collaborative efforts on many counts to make it the company that it is. And same's the case with Amazon, same's the case with other companies in the marketplace. This is where the word frenemies actually got born. Today, in this digital world, to be successful, you need to be befriending the same people that you compete with fiercely. Because if you don't do that, then you will miss out the bigger advantage of collaboration and of transformation that all of us are aligned to. Who could have thought about the Pangea Alliance? And I'm sure many of you have read about it. It's Guardian, it's CNN, it's Reuters, it's FT. They all fiercely compete. But when it came to the digital assets and digital advertising, they pooled their contents together. They pooled their entire ad space together and went out to the market and said, we are going to be one when it comes to customers. Advantage, it has more than 110 million people who are associated with what they do, and they have better insights into what the customer does, how the customer behaves compared to they could have ever done. My own example, and I come from the telecom world. I've led the world's third largest telecom company and India's largest. We created it from scratch. And while we were creating that company, we were wondering to ourselves, what make us compete and differentiate in the market? And believe you me, it was not the passive infrastructure that everybody is very proud of. So what does a tower do to make me competitive? What does a shelter do to make me competitive? What are the DG set make me competitive about? And what is the battery banks that I create any competitiveness in my business? None. And we said, if these create no business and they are replication of costs and energy and effort, why can't we all pool these together and then use them together? Of course, now every telecom company in the world today is actually delineating its passive assets and actually realizing the value. But what was a big effort that we made at that time was, nobody had heard about fierceful competitors forming a joint venture amongst themselves, which means a financially controlled and managed company together and still be competing in the marketplace. Now, this is absolutely paramount to stay competitive. And lately, Facebook, Amazon, Google, IBM, Microsoft, on the entire AI piece are actually researching together. Because what's the fun of each one of them trying to do it? And you are a great example. CLMVT is exactly trying to do that. The whole issue is, how do we really move forward on that and see some tangible assets and make some tangible assets come live through what we are trying to do. And therefore, collaboration is important. The third in my list is the global thinking as opposed a very local thinking. And you wonder, why is this important? We are going to be functioning in Thailand. We are going to be operating in Vietnam. Where does globalization and global approach come into play? Well, we all thought like that in telecom. You remember that 80%, 90% of the revenues of any telecom company were only voice and SMS. And SMS was good 8 to 10% of the revenues and chunky piece of profitability for any telecom operator. They did not get beaten up by somebody who started a shop next doors, but we all got beaten up by a company that came up in United States of America with an application called WhatsApp. And they chewed our happiness. They took away all the revenues that we had and actually, did a checkmate. And this is true for many. Even if you don't have aspirations to go global, it's important to know your global environment, because your next collaborator, your next opponent, your next challenger, your next disruptor could be coming from any part of the world. And unless and until you think globally, you're going to miss out the woods for the trees. And that's important. The biggest example here is on the global approach. We all remember the McDonald's days. And do you know that McDonald's took 19 years before it entered the second country outside United States of America? Any guess which was the second country that they went to? Canada, right? And Uber, they are in 60 countries in less than 7 years. We have a great Indian food services company called Zomato. They've entered into more than 25 countries in less than 4 years. And today the internet, the digitization allows you to do that. You can actually be present anywhere globally. The scale comes from there, and the reach comes from there, and the information comes from there. We have this company, and everybody must be aware of this, called Xiaomi. They entered India about 5 years back, I would say roughly. There were 5 guys that they entered the country with and a small office in Bangalore and decided to be only present online. And everybody took them with a pinch of salt, thought, what are these guys going to do to the Indian market? We are already well entrenched. I'm sure you all read news of late. They are the largest smartphone company in the country. From online, they went physical as well. They've caught the imagination of the youngsters in the country and have made a huge amount of impact on the market, and their products have really proliferated right across the length and breadth of the Indian market, and they've gone for an IPO later and created a lot of value. So all I'm saying is that it's very important that all countries, all companies start thinking globally if you really want to enter a successful digital transformation and break the dilemma of where I stand and where I should be. However, all this is not going to happen without capabilities. And again, we can talk about tens of capabilities that need to be built. I'm again going to dwell this morning on 3 that I have picked up through my experience as to what really you need to build and inculcate into your companies to be competitive and to be able to transform. So scale versus complexity, and we will talk about that. Relevance versus experience, and we will touch upon it. And finally, analytics versus data. I think it's very, very important to have a view of all these. Let's talk about scale and complexity. When it comes to Uber, for example, that we spoke about, Uber's not worried about the scale anymore. Uber's worried about the price wars in every country. In Thailand, they had to sell to somebody else because the economics weren't making sense. That's the complexity that works out, and Grab took them over. They are worried about the regulations around safety of passengers and making sure that they have the right identity and checks done on the drivers who come and join them. So it's a different type of complexity. About 10 years back, people used to come and talk to me when I was running a telecom operation, and they used to ask me, what keeps you awake at night? And I used to say that, I don't know how to build the scale to build a company that can take care of 100 million customers, because most countries of the world don't even have a population of 100 million. And the only people who knew about this were the Chinese, and they wouldn't talk to us. So we had to, hit, try, fail. And, that's how we learned how to scale up to 100 million. When we did 100 million, 200 million was never a question mark because we had learned how to build scale. And by then, internet was live as well. So people again came, and still this question was live to say, what keeps you awake at night? And the answer was very simple. It's the complexity of what we are trying to build. Can you imagine every telecom operation today wants to have digital services in it, which means entertainment, which means education, which means financial services, which means security services, so on and so forth. And within the same organization, which has got a telco demeanor, to build a complexity of managing these different businesses and these different expectations and different people is not an easy job. It's a very, very tough job to do. And the most important here is that every business model that is taking shape today in the digital world, by the time it crosses a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year horizon, the business model has undergone a change, and the model has become very, very complex. So unless and until the company is capable of dealing with complexity as a trait, they will not be able to deal with this transformation that effectively. The next and more important is this relevance versus experience, and it's very difficult for people who come from the baby boomers era to understand this. The millennials probably, have a better appreciation and expectation that spells out of here. So let's look at how the world is getting divided. I think 3 simple classifications of people and workforce today is digital natives, digital immigrants, and digital aliens. And that's how the world is getting divided. And all 3 are important. I am by no means suggesting that digital aliens are not relevant. They will have to be relevant because the longevity is going up. We are going to live much longer than probably what our forefathers did. And we need to be employed. We need to be earning money. We need to take care of ourselves. Even the state cannot take care of an aging population if they're not earning themselves. So I think to keep that in mind, we need to make sure that for jobs that we create, at least relevance, where we are very used to say, it takes you 30 years before you become the CEO of a company. It takes you 20 years before you become a vice president. It takes you 10 years, so on and so forth. I think that era is gone. What is important is relevance. If you are most relevant to the job that is being done, it's very important that we recognize that talent and don't reinvent the wheel. And every digitally transforming company needs to look at that opportunity with its people, its workforce, and make sure relevance gains precedence over experience if we really want to transform successfully. My great example here is the DBS Bank. Those guys have done a wonderful job, through hackathons, through training people. The biggest thing is they have actually helped their digital aliens to become digital immigrants, but by providing them the right knowledge that is required. And that's what CLMVT has an opportunity to work on and make sure that more and more workforce that is probably getting irrelevant becomes relevant if we really want to win in this digital transformation era that we are talking about. Let's get down to the data analytics, and this is again a subject that gets talked about in every part of the world. Wherever we go, everybody talks about analytics and data. The fact is that half the world's data is on IP addresses now, but 80% of it is still unstructured, and that's important to note as something important. The second is that we still commit so many errors on data. United States of America commits 1.5 million medical errors every year. I don't know whether you read about this 43-year-old Portuguese guy who was on a wheelchair he was more elderly. He was on wheelchair for 43 years. And that was because of a wrong diagnosis that had happened. And he was given an over-the-counter drug post-identification of his problem, and he was walking in 2 weeks' time. 2 weeks' time. Can you imagine? All of us live with those exposures and with those fallacies in today's world, and analytics really transforms that for everybody. Bears College, they analyzed 70,000 articles on protein through Watson, and they could do it because there was a Watson-like engine available for analytics. It could have taken them years and years to actually just sift through that in-depth analytics that's required. And my own belief is the power of analytics is so huge that even in commoditized industries, it can allow you to differentiate till you come up with a product differentiation or a service differentiation. And we can use it to our advantage, and it's a skill that must be imbibed at every level, at an individual level, at a company level, and at a country level. Finally, the moot question that everybody talks about in today's world is, are we too late? Have we not started at the right time? And my answer is very simple. It's never too late. I think the time is absolutely right. The next transformation wave will be even deeper than the one that we've been used to. So if you've not started the effort on transformation and true transformation, please begin it now. It's never too late. Finally, it's about a bold decision. It's about a bet. Don't be in a hurry. Don't expect results tomorrow. You're not going to get results tomorrow. It'll take its time before it really reaps the results that you're looking for. But make your bold decisions, make your bold bets, and you have to prioritize. You cannot do 20 things. It won't happen. Try to do 5 things, but really make this transformation. And therefore, I've only spoken about 3+3 with you today. And finally, committed and focused, absolutely important, because if the nations, if the companies, if the individuals are not committed and focused, we are not going to reach this digital transformation success that we are looking for. I'm very bullish about what's happening in countries in the developing world, and I'm sure CLMVT is not going to stay behind. In fact, with this endeavor, they are going to be racing ahead of others and have an opportunity of pooling in their resources and brains together for this transformation. I wish all of you a lot of good luck, and it was once again a pleasure to be here and speaking to all of you this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir, for for sharing us your knowledge and experiences. Could you please remain on stage because we would like to express our appreciation. And once again, please welcome Ms. Pimchanok Wonkhapon, Director General Trade Policies and Strategy Office, Ministry of Commerce, Thailand, up on the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, could you please give one more round of applause for our distinguished speakers? We have come a long way to sharing us the digital transformation dilemma. Thank you very much. Once again, Mr. Sanjay Kapoor.